I'm Emily Mitchell, 28, and until last month, my parents saw me as nothing more than their personal housekeeper. Every night was the same, designing architectural proposals while scrubbing dishes, vacuuming, and folding laundry, despite my architecture degree. They called my career a cute hobby. Little did they know, I was one presentation away from a $4 million contract that would change everything overnight. Before I share how my family's attitude completely changed, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments, hit subscribe, and let me show you how sometimes success is the sweetest form of vindication. Growing up in the Mitchell household meant understanding your place in the family hierarchy. And mine was always at the bottom. My parents, Richard and Catherine Mitchell, raised me and my older brother James in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland. My father, a construction foreman, believed in traditional values and conventional success paths. My mother worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office and managed our home with military precision. From the beginning, the differences in how they treated us were subtle but unmistakable. When James needed help with homework, everything stopped. When I needed help, I was told to figure it out because independence builds character. When James joined the football team, Dad never missed a game. When I won the state junior architectural design competition at 16, they couldn't make it because someone had to clean the house before Sunday dinner. By 12, I was responsible for dusting, vacuuming, and helping with dinner. By 15, laundry, grocery shopping, and meal planning had been added to my chores. James occasionally took out the trash, but that was the extent of his household responsibilities. Boys need time for sports and studies if they're going to be successful men, Mom would say, completely missing the irony as I balanced honors classes, extracurricular activities, and running half the household. I left for college with dreams of never returning. But student loans and the brutal reality of starting an architecture firm in a competitive market brought me back to my childhood bedroom at 26, just until I build enough clients, I promised myself. 2 years later, I was still there, trapped in the same dynamics, but now with the added bonus of adult condescension. A typical evening in our house, I'd come home from my office, exhausted after meeting with clients and drafting designs, only to find Mom waiting with a list of chores. Emily, the bathroom needs scrubbing and we're out of your father's favorite bread. Could you run to the store before making dinner? James is coming over tonight. I'd check my watch, calculating whether I could finish my presentation slides after these tasks. Mom, I've got a really important client presentation tomorrow. Can Dad pick up bread on his way home? She'd look at me like I'd suggested we sell the house and join a commune. Your father works hard all day. He doesn't need errands on top of that. Besides, this little business of yours needs to understand family comes first. My little business had won 3 local design awards, but in my parents' eyes, it was a hobby I'd eventually abandon for a real job with benefits and a retirement plan. The fact that I had an actual office downtown with 2 employees somehow never registered. That evening, as I chopped vegetables for dinner, Dad walked in, patted my head like I was still 10, and asked, "How's the drawing going, kiddo?" "It's architectural design, Dad, and it's going well. Actually, I'm presenting for the Greenwood Tower project tomorrow. It's a $4 million contract that could really put my firm on the map." He opened the refrigerator, grabbed a beer, and nodded absently. "That's nice. Hey, did you remember to call the plumber about that leak in the guest bathroom?" Before I could answer, my brother James arrived, 6'2" with our father's build and our mother's smile. James was the golden child. Recently promoted to sales manager at his insurance company, he'd come bearing news of his latest commission check. $30,000 for the quarter, he announced, and my parents erupted in celebration. "That's my boy." Dad clapped him on the shoulder. Mom beamed. "We need to celebrate. Emily, is dinner almost ready?" I nodded, swallowing the bitter pill of comparison. Last month, I'd secured a $50,000 project designing an eco-friendly dental office, but when I'd shared the news, Mom had simply asked if I could still drive her to her hair appointment the next day. During dinner, James talked about his company's retirement plan while I mentally rehearsed my presentation. When I attempted to share my concerns about competing against larger firms tomorrow, Mom interjected. "Did I tell you about Aunt Carol's daughter? She just got benefits at her accounting firm, full medical, dental, vision." The implication was clear. Why couldn't I be more like my cousin with her stable, respectable job? Later, after washing everyone's dishes, I retreated to my room makeshift home office. My desk was squeezed between my childhood bookshelf and the twin bed I'd long outgrown. Post-it notes covered my wall, and architectural models took up most of the available surface space. As I worked on finalizing my presentation, a text from Mom appeared. "Don't forget to fold the laundry before bed." I stared at my phone, then at the complex sustainable energy system I was designing for a building that could change the skyline of our city. Sometimes I felt like I was living a double life, respected professional by day, Cinderella by night. The worst part wasn't the chores or the dismissiveness, it was the growing suspicion that maybe they were right. Maybe my dreams were too big. Maybe I was fooling myself thinking I could win against established firms with decades of experience and teams of dozens. In my darkest moments, I wondered if I should just give up and get an ordinary job with benefits that would finally make my parents proud. But every time that thought surfaced, I'd look at my designs, innovative, sustainable, beautiful, and remember why I'd chosen this path. I didn't just want to design buildings, I wanted to change how we think about urban spaces, and tomorrow I'd have my chance to prove it to the selection committee, and maybe finally to my family. My architecture firm, Mitchell Sustainable Design, operated out of a converted storefront in the less expensive part of downtown. The rent was manageable if sometimes tight, and the large windows provided excellent natural light for reviewing physical models and blueprints. What made my firm different was our approach to commercial architecture. While most firms were incorporating token green elements to satisfy regulations, we designed with sustainability as the core principle, not an afterthought. My specialty was creating buildings that weren't just environmentally conscious but actually generated resources, energy, water collection, even food through integrated garden systems. I'd graduated at the top of my class from Portland State University's architecture program, followed by a master's in sustainable design from Berkeley. My thesis project, a self-sustaining community center, had won the department's annual Innovation Award and been featured in a small industry publication. These accomplishments felt significant until I'd return home to be asked if I'd remembered to pick up the dry cleaning. My small team consisted of just 2 other people. Zach Pearson, my assistant, was a recent business graduate with an enthusiasm for sustainable enterprises that matched my own. He handled the administrative side of things, client communications, scheduling, budget tracking, allowing me to focus on design. Rachel Kim, my junior designer, was brilliant with 3D modeling and the technical aspects of bringing my conceptual designs to life. We worked well together in our tiny office, each bringing different strengths to our projects. The Greenwood Tower project was unlike anything we'd pursued before. At 22 stories, it would be the tallest new construction in the city's rapidly developing river district. The developers had made sustainability a key requirement, which had given my small firm the courage to throw our hat in the ring against companies 10 times our size. Winning this contract would mean financial stability, expansion opportunities, and the kind of high-profile project that could establish us as serious contenders in the commercial architecture world. For me personally, it would mean finally being able to move out of my parents' house and perhaps finally earning their respect. The afternoon before my presentation, I sat with Zach and Rachel reviewing our proposal one last time. The living wall system on the south face will reduce cooling costs by approximately 26% during summer months, Rachel pointed out, rotating the digital model on her screen, and the integrated solar panels on the terraced rooftop gardens should generate about 40% of the building's electrical needs. Zach nodded approvingly. The financial projections show the sustainable systems paying for themselves within 7 years. That's a strong selling point for the investors. I chewed my lip nervously. Montgomery & Associates will have slicker presentations, and City Core Architects has that partnership with Green Building Council members. Yeah, but they don't have this, Rachel said, pulling up my innovative water reclamation system that would capture rainwater, filter it through a series of beautiful public garden features, and reuse it throughout the building. This is revolutionary, Emily. No one else is thinking about water systems this way. I wanted to believe her, but doubts crept in, the same doubts my parents had planted and fertilized for years. Was I really good enough, or was I just playing at being an architect, as my mother often implied? My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. We need groceries for dinner. Can you stop on your way home? I sighed and replied that I'd be working late preparing for my presentation. Her response came immediately. Family has to eat, Emily. The guilt was automatic, ingrained from years of conditioning. I found myself apologizing and promising to pick up groceries, even as Zach gave me a concerned look. You know, you don't have to keep letting them treat you like that, he said carefully. They're my parents. I replied, the standard response whenever anyone questioned the dynamic, and I'm living in their house. It's complicated. It's not that complicated, Rachel muttered, having heard enough stories to form her own opinion. They take advantage of you because you let them. I changed the subject back to the presentation, but her words lingered uncomfortably. As we worked late into the evening, finalizing materials and rehearsing talking points, I received 3 more texts from home, one about the specific brand of detergent to buy, another reminding me to bring in the mail, and a third asking if I'd scheduled the furnace cleaning. By the time I left the office at 11 p.m., I was exhausted. I stopped at the 24-hour grocery store, then drove home to a dark house. Everyone was asleep, so I quietly put away the groceries, moved the load of towels from the washer to the dryer, and finally made my way to my room. I had just enough energy to review my presentation once more before my eyes began closing involuntarily. I fell asleep at my desk, dreams mixing with anxiety about tomorrow, the biggest opportunity of my career hanging in the balance. The morning erupted into chaos before my alarm even finished its first ring. Mom's voice penetrated my bedroom door. "Emily, did you leave these dishes in the sink last night? Your father couldn't make his coffee." That jolted upright. A page of notes stuck to my cheek. The crease of my desk imprinted on my forehead. The clock read 6:42 a.m. My presentation was at 10 o'clock. "Sorry, Mom, I got in late from work," I called back, rushing to gather my presentation materials. The door opened and Mom stood there, arms crossed. At 57, Catherine Mitchell maintained herself meticulously hair-colored to hide any hint of gray, makeup always perfect, slim figure preserved through strict dieting. Looking disheveled was not an option in her world. And my current state clearly disappointed her. "Work," she said with a subtle emphasis that transformed the word into something frivolous. "Well, while you were at work, the rest of us were here maintaining the household. Those dishes need washing before you leave." "Mom, I have a huge presentation today. I need to prepare." "We all have responsibilities, Emily. The world doesn't stop because you're playing businesswoman today." The phrase "playing businesswoman" hit like a slap. I'd been running my own architecture firm for 2 years, managing clients, employees, and projects, but in her eyes, I was still a child playing pretend. I washed the dishes in record time, then rushed to shower and make myself presentable. I chose my most professional outfit, a charcoal pantsuit with a deep green blouse that brought out my eyes. As I applied makeup to cover the dark circles from weeks of late nights, Dad appeared in the bathroom doorway. "You look nice." Job interview. Despite countless conversations about my firm, he still didn't grasp that I owned a business, not just freelance between real jobs. "No, Dad, I'm presenting for that major contract I told you about, the $4 million Greenwood Tower project." Right, he nodded vaguely. "Well, good luck with your presentation. Oh, before you go, the garage door is making that noise again. Maybe you could take a look this weekend." I bit my tongue and nodded, knowing there was no point in explaining again that my architecture degree didn't make me a garage door repair expert. I arrived downtown with barely enough time to park and make my way to the Reynolds building, where the presentation would take place. The gleaming glass tower housed the offices of Reynolds Sustainable Developments, the company behind the Greenwood Tower project. In the lobby, I spotted teams from competing firms. Montgomery and Associates had sent 5 people, all in perfectly tailored suits, rolling sleek presentation cases. Citicorp Architects had a team of at least 6, including their famous founding partner, and then there was me solo, carrying a portfolio case and a cardboard tube of rolled drawings. My assistant and junior designer back at the office because we couldn't afford to all take the morning off from other client work. Self-doubt crept in as I rode the elevator to the 34th floor. Was I being naive thinking my 3-person firm could compete with established companies? Was Mom right that I was just playing businesswoman? The receptionist directed me to a large conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Inside, a selection committee of 7 people sat around a massive table. I recognized Jeffrey Pembroke, the development project manager, and Victoria Winters, the sustainability consultant. In the corner sat an older gentleman whose silver hair and expensive suit suggested importance, though he wasn't on the committee list I'd been provided. "Miss Mitchell," Jeffrey stood to greet me. "Thank you for coming. You'll have 20 minutes for your presentation," followed by questions. I nodded, trying to project confidence as I set up my materials. When I connected my laptop to the projector, nothing happened. My stomach dropped as I fiddled with connections while the committee waited. Sweat beaded on my forehead. "Technical difficulties?" Victoria asked with a raised eyebrow. "Just a moment," I managed. Trying another cable, nothing. The seconds ticked by agonizingly. The silver-haired man in the corner stood and walked over. "Try the other input," he suggested quietly. "This system is counter-attentioner." I followed his advice, and immediately my presentation appeared on the screen. I gave him a grateful smile, and he nodded before returning to his seat. Taking a deep breath, I launched into my presentation. After the initial hiccup, I found my rhythm. I explained how our design for Greenwood Tower wasn't just a building but an integrated ecosystem. The living walls and rooftop gardens wouldn't just be decorative but functional parts of the building's temperature regulation system. The water reclamation design would reduce water usage by 60% compared to conventional buildings of similar size. As I spoke, I noticed the committee members leaning forward with interest. Victoria Winters was taking detailed notes, and Jeffrey Pembroke was nodding along to the financial projections. Even the silver-haired man in the corner seemed engaged, his piercing blue eyes focused intently on my sustainable energy diagrams. When I finished the formal presentation, Jeffrey opened the floor for questions. Most were expected clarifications about materials, timeline questions, budget concerns. I answered each confidently, my years of education and experience flowing naturally despite my earlier nerves. Then the silver-haired man spoke for the first time. "Miss Mitchell, your water reclamation system is unlike anything I've seen in commercial architecture. What inspired this approach?" His direct question silenced the room. I realized suddenly that despite not being on my committee list, this man carried significant weight. "Truth be told, necessity," I answered honestly. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I developed an appreciation for our water resources. But during my studies, I researched global water scarcity issues and realized that even water-rich regions need to revolutionize how we use this resource. Traditional conservation methods felt incremental when we need transformational change. So I started thinking about buildings not as water consumers but as water processors, collecting, filtering, using, and returning cleaner water to the environment than they took in. He nodded slowly, seeming to weigh my words. "And the additional cost of implementing such a system? Initial investment is 12% above conventional systems," I acknowledged, "but the operational savings offset this completely within 5.8 years. More importantly, the system creates resilience against water scarcity and rate increases, essentially future-proofing the building against one of our most pressing resource challenges." A slight smile crossed his face, and he exchanged a look with Jeffrey before falling silent again. After answering a few more technical questions, I was thanked for my time and told that they'd be making their decision within 2 weeks. I packed up my materials, feeling a mixture of pride in my performance and uncertainty about my chances against the much larger firms. As I left the conference room, I heard footsteps behind me. "Miss Mitchell." I turned to find the silver-haired man approaching. "I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. Alexander Reynolds." He extended his hand. My breath caught. Alexander Reynolds, billionaire CEO of Reynolds Sustainable Developments and one of the most influential figures in green building. And he had personally attended my presentation. "It's an honor, Mr. Reynolds," I managed, shaking his hand. "Your presentation was refreshing. Too many firms claim to prioritize sustainability while making only superficial changes to conventional designs. Your approach is different." He studied me with those penetrating blue eyes. "How long has your firm been in operation?" 2 years officially. But you've been developing these concepts much longer," he finished for me. "It shows. The integration is seamless, not an afterthought." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched by his assessment. He handed me a business card. "Regardless of the committee's decision, I'd like to continue our conversation about your water systems. Call my office next week." With that, he turned and walked back toward the conference room, leaving me standing in the hallway, his card in my hand, hope blooming despite my best efforts to manage expectations. I returned home that evening mentally exhausted but cautiously optimistic about my presentation. The apartment was filled with the aroma of pot roast, Mom's specialty, and the sound of voices from the dining room. "Hello," I called, setting down my portfolio case. "In here," Mom responded. "We've already started dinner." I walked into the dining room to find my parents and brother seated around the table. Plates half finished, no place had been set for me. "Sorry I'm late." The presentation ran longer than expected, and then I had client calls all afternoon. Mom gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "There's food on the stove. We didn't know when you'd be home." I served myself and joined them at the table where James was in the middle of describing his latest golf game with his boss. "So he says to me, 'Mitchell, with that swing you should be negotiating our insurance premiums.'" James laughed, and our parents joined in appreciatively. "How did your drawing thing go?" Dad asked, finally acknowledging my existence. "It's not a drawing thing, Dad. It was a presentation for a multi-million-dollar architectural contract," I corrected, trying to keep frustration from my voice. "It went really well, actually. The committee seemed impressed with our sustainable systems, especially the water reclamation design." "That's nice, honey," Mom said dismissively. "Did you remember to pick up your father's prescription today? I texted you about it. I was in meetings all day, Mom. I couldn't just leave to run errands." "Well, someone had to do it, so I went myself," she said with a martyred sigh. "And you missed Lauren's birthday dinner last night." Lauren was my cousin, the accountant with the enviable benefits package. I told you weeks ago I couldn't make it. I was preparing for this presentation. Family obligations don't disappear because of work, Emily, Mom said. Lauren was very disappointed. Something inside me snapped. Years of accumulated frustration, dismissal, and unequal treatment crystallized into a sudden sharp clarity. Do you realize what today was for me? I asked quietly. This presentation could literally change my entire career. I've been working toward this opportunity for years. Now, Emily, Dad began in his placating tone. No, I want to know, does my work matter to this family at all? Because it seems like James's golf games get more respect than my entire career. James looked uncomfortable. Hey, that's not fair, isn't it? I turned to him. When you made sales manager, Mom made your favorite meal and Dad brought out the good scotch. When I won the Westside Development Award last year, which came with a $10,000 grant, Mom asked if I could still drive her to her hair appointment the next morning. That's different, Mom said stiffly. How is it different? James has a real career with a future. Benefits, retirement, stability. You're still, she gestured vaguely, figuring things out with this architecture hobby. Hobby? The word felt like a slap. I have a master's degree. I own a firm. I employ people. Today I presented a design for a $4 million project to one of the biggest developers in the state. In what universe is that a hobby? Don't take that tone with your mother, Dad warned. I've spent my entire life being this family's unpaid maid while trying to build a career you refuse to take seriously. I continued, unable to stop now that the dam had broken. I cook, I clean, I run errands, all while running my own business. When was the last time either of you asked about my work without dismissing it in the same breath? When was the last time James had to wash a dish or vacuum a floor? To my surprise, James spoke up. She's right, you know. Emily does everything around here, and you guys never give her credit for her actual career. Mom and Dad looked at James in shock, clearly not expecting him to take my side. We've always supported both of you equally, Mom said defensively. That's not true. And you know it, I replied. You've always treated James like his time and career are precious, while treating me like household help who occasionally draws pictures. Your little drawings will never amount to anything real in this world, Emily, Mom snapped, finally revealing what she truly thought. You need to grow up and get practical. All these dreams about changing architecture, it's childish fantasy. The room went silent. The words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. Even Dad looked shocked at Mom's outburst. Catherine, he said quietly, that was unnecessary, but the damage was done. I stood up slowly, my dinner barely touched. I have built something real, I said, my voice wavering slightly, and the fact that you can't see it says more about you than it does about me. Successful women in your field are just lucky, Dad said, attempting to soften Mom's blow but only making it worse. They know the right people or marry into connections. It's not about talent. I stared at him, finally seeing clearly how little my parents thought of not just my work, but my entire gender's professional capabilities. I'm going to my room, I said quietly, and tomorrow I'm looking for an apartment. I can't do this anymore. Emily, don't be dramatic, Mom started, but I was already walking away. In my room I collapsed onto my bed, tears of frustration and hurt flowing freely. My phone buzzed repeatedly, text messages from my parents downstairs, unwilling to continue the conversation in person but happy to keep criticizing via text. Then a call from an unknown number came through. I almost declined it, not in the mood to talk to anyone, but some instinct made me answer. Hello, Emily Mitchell speaking, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The voice on the other end paused. Miss Mitchell, this is Jeffrey Pembroke from Reynolds Developments. Is this a good time to talk? I sat up straight, immediately switching to professional mode despite my tear-stained face. Yes, of course, Mr. Pembroke. I'll be brief. The committee was very impressed with your presentation today. Another pause. We'd like to offer your firm the Greenwood Tower contract. The world seemed to stop. You would. Alexander Reynolds himself was particularly taken with your water reclamation system. He believes it could set a new standard for commercial buildings in water-stressed regions. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob of relief and joy. Miss Mitchell, are you there? Yes, sorry, I managed. Thank you. Thank you so much. This opportunity means everything. We'll send the formal paperwork tomorrow. Congratulations, Miss Mitchell. Your vision for sustainable architecture is exactly what Reynolds Developments has been looking for. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. The significance of what had just happened slowly sinking in. A $4 million contract, my vision being recognized by industry leaders, financial security, and my mother's words just minutes earlier, your little drawings will never amount to anything real. The irony was almost too perfect. I barely slept that night, my mind racing between the emotional confrontation with my family and the incredible news about the contract. By morning, I had made up my mind about several things. I rose early before anyone else was awake and left the house without breakfast. I needed space to process everything without my parents' presence. The office was empty when I arrived. Zach and Rachel wouldn't be in for another hour. I made coffee and checked my voicemail again to confirm I hadn't dreamed the call from Jeffrey Pembroke. There was the message confirming Mitchell Sustainable Design had won the Greenwood Tower contract. A laugh of disbelief escaped me as I played it a second time. I called Rachel and Zach, unable to wait until they arrived to share the news. "We got it," I blurted out when Rachel answered, her voice still groggy with sleep. "Got what?" she asked, confusion evident. "The Greenwood contract. Reynolds Developments called last night. They're sending over the paperwork today." Her shriek of excitement was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Are you serious? We beat Montgomery and City Corps?" Apparently, Alexander Reynolds himself liked our water reclamation system. By the time Zach and Rachel arrived at the office, I had already started researching larger office spaces. The Greenwood contract would require expanding our team, and our current space simply wouldn't accommodate growth. "I still can't believe it," Zach said, shaking his head as he set down a box of celebratory donuts. "Do you know what this means? We're going to be designing the most visible new building in the city." Rachel was already at her computer pulling up our designs. "We should revisit the northwest corner. I had some ideas about improving the daylight penetration there." As we excitedly discussed next steps, a delivery person arrived with an enormous gift basket. The attached card read, "Congratulations on your innovative vision for Greenwood Tower. Looking forward to creating something extraordinary together, Alexander Reynolds." The basket contained high-end sustainable products, a bottle of champagne, and information about an exclusive business networking dinner that evening at Aloy's, the most upscale restaurant in the city. "You're having dinner with Alexander Reynolds." Rachel's eyes widened as she read the invitation. "Emily, do you understand how huge this is? He never socializes with contractors. They say he only takes meetings with people he's personally investing in." I was about to respond when the office door opened again, this time admitting a woman in a sharp pantsuit who introduced herself as Marissa Jenkins, legal counsel for Reynolds Development. "Ms. Mitchell, I have the contract documents for your review," she said, placing a thick folder on my desk. "Mr. Reynolds has authorized an expedited process, so once you and your counsel have reviewed these, we can proceed quickly." The morning passed in a blur of legal discussions, calls to my own attorney, and beginning to plan our approach to the project. By lunchtime, I had signed the initial paperwork that officially made Greenwood Tower our project. I was reviewing the contract details when the office door opened once more. This time, Alexander Reynolds himself stood in the doorway, his imposing height and distinguished appearance commanding the room immediately. "Ms. Mitchell," he greeted me with a nod, "I hope I'm not interrupting." Zach and Rachel froze like deer in headlights, while I tried to maintain composure. "Not at all, Mr. Reynolds. This is an unexpected honor." He glanced around our modest office with interest rather than judgment. "I wanted to personally congratulate you. Your proposal wasn't just the best sustainability approach, it was the most innovative architectural concept we've seen in years." "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved by his assessment. "That means a great deal coming from you." "I meant what I said about your water reclamation system," he continued. "It has applications far beyond Greenwood Tower. I'd like to discuss potential patent and development opportunities." My mind raced as I processed his words. Patent opportunities, development? This went far beyond the contract itself. "I'd be very interested in that conversation," I managed. "Excellent. We can discuss it this evening at dinner. I've invited several key industry figures who should meet you." He paused, studying me with those penetrating blue eyes. "You're at the beginning of something significant, Ms. Mitchell. Your approach to sustainable systems could transform commercial architecture." After he left, the three of us stared at each other in shocked silence. "Did Alexander Reynolds just say you're going to transform commercial architecture?" Zach finally asked, his voice unnaturally high. "And did he mention patents and development opportunities?" Rachel added. I nodded slowly, the full implications starting to sink in. "I think this contract might be just the beginning." As the day progressed, I received another text from my mother. "We expect you home by 6 to prepare dinner. Your father has his bridge club friends coming over." For the first time, I felt no guilt or obligation as I typed my response. "Can't make it. I have a business dinner with client." Her reply was immediate and predictable. "Family obligations come first, Emily." I turned my phone off and focused on preparing for the evening ahead. This night wasn't about family drama, it was about my professional future. I spent an hour after work selecting the perfect outfit for dinner, a tailored navy dress that projected both professionalism and confidence. As I applied makeup and styled my hair into a sleek updo, my phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from my parents. I ignored them all. Eloise was housed in a restored historical building downtown, its discreet entrance marked only by a small brass plaque. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated cream-colored walls adorned with original artwork. The maitre d' recognized Reynolds' name immediately and led me to a private dining room where several people were already gathered. Alexander Reynolds stood talking with a woman I recognized as the editor of Architectural Innovations magazine. He noticed me immediately and gestured me over. "Emily Mitchell, I'd like you to meet Diane Winters, editor-in-chief of Architectural Innovations," he said by way of introduction. "Ms. Mitchell, Alexander has been singing your praises," Diane said, shaking my hand. "He tells me your water reclamation system could revolutionize how we approach resource management in commercial buildings." I felt a flutter of nervousness but pushed through it. That's the goal. Water conservation has lagged behind energy efficiency in building design, but it's equally critical for true sustainability. "I'd love to feature your approach in our next issue," she said. "We're doing a special on Transformate's voices in sustainable architecture." Before I could respond, Reynolds introduced me to more guests: the city's director of urban development, two prominent real estate investors, and the dean of architecture from my alma mater. Each conversation revolved around my designs, my vision, my innovations. These industry leaders weren't just being polite, they were genuinely interested in my ideas. During dinner, Reynolds stood to address the table. "I invited you all tonight to meet someone I believe will change our industry. Emily Mitchell has created an integrated water system that doesn't just conserve resources but actively regenerates them. Her approach to the Greenwood Tower project demonstrates the kind of forward thinking we desperately need." He raised his glass, "To Emily Mitchell and the future of sustainable architecture." As everyone toasted, I noticed a photographer from Portland Business Journal discreetly capturing the moment. A reporter approached afterward, asking for a brief interview about being selected for the Greenwood project. "Mr. Reynolds says you're the future of sustainable architecture," the reporter noted. "That's high praise from someone of his stature. How does it feel to receive this kind of recognition so early in your career?" The question caught me off guard. How did it feel? After years of dismissal from my own family, having industry leaders validate my vision was overwhelming. "It feels like vindication," I answered honestly. "I've believed in these systems for years, developing and refining them even when people told me they were impractical or unnecessary. To have someone like Alexander Reynolds see their value, it confirms what I've always known: sustainability isn't just an add-on feature, it's the future of how we must build." The reporter seemed pleased with this candid response, jotting notes quickly before asking about specific technical aspects of the Greenwood design. As the evening progressed, Reynolds pulled me aside. "I meant what I said earlier about patent opportunities. Your water system has applications beyond single buildings. Entire districts could implement this approach." "I've always envisioned it as scalable," I acknowledged, "but I haven't had the resources to develop beyond building-level applications." "Resources can be arranged," he said simply. "I'd like to feature your work in next quarter's National Sustainable Business magazine. It's time more people knew your name." By the time I checked my phone again, it was nearly midnight. 17 missed calls and 32 text messages from my parents. The most recent from my mother: "We saw you on Channel 8 News with Alexander Reynolds. Call immediately." I scrolled through my social media notifications to find hundreds of alerts: colleagues, former classmates, and industry connects all commenting on articles about the Greenwood contract announcement. Portland Business Journal had already published an online piece featuring a photo of me with Reynolds, titled "Rising Star Architect Secures Landmark Greenwood Tower Project." The universe had a strange sense of timing. I sent a quick text to my parents' home soon, big news to share, and called a rideshare. Despite the late hour, I knew they would be waiting up, and this confrontation couldn't wait until morning. When I arrived home, every light in the house was on. I found my parents and brother sitting in the living room, a laptop open to the Business Journal article. "Emily," my father stood when I entered, "why didn't you tell us you were meeting with Alexander Reynolds? He's one of the wealthiest men in the state." "I tried to tell you about the Greenwood project many times," I replied calmly. "You weren't interested." "Well, we're interested now," Mom said, her tone completely transformed from dismissive to excited. "Tell us everything." I set down my purse and looked at them both, really looked at them, my mother's eyes shining with sudden pride, my father standing taller, ready to claim association with my success, James watching the scene unfold with a mixture of amusement and discomfort. My firm won the contract to design Greenwood Tower, I said simply. It's a $4 million project that will put Mitchell Sustainable Design on the map. Alexander Reynolds believes my water reclamation system could transform how commercial buildings approach resource management. He's talking about patents and feature articles in national magazines. That's my girl, Dad exclaimed, as if he'd been my champion all along. I always knew you had something special with your designs. Did you? I asked quietly, because just yesterday you said successful women in architecture are just lucky and know the right people, and Mom said my little drawings will never amount to anything real. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Oh honey, I was just worried about you, Mom tried, her tone honeyed. Parents worry, we want security for our children. No, I said firmly. You didn't worry about James's security when he chose insurance sales. You celebrated every small victory of his career while treating mine like an inconvenient hobby. That's not fair, Emily, Dad started, but James interrupted. Actually, it is fair, he said, surprising everyone again by taking my side. You guys have always treated Emily like she's less than me. You've expected her to handle all the household stuff while building a business, then criticized her for not having a real job with benefits. It's been painful to watch. Mom looked genuinely shocked. We never meant to make you feel less valued, Emily. Maybe not consciously, I acknowledged, but you did for years. Well, things will be different now, Dad said, putting an arm around my shoulders. My daughter, the architect to the stars. Wait until I tell the guys at the construction site. I gently removed his arm. Things will indeed be different. I've already started looking at apartments. I'll be moving out by the end of the month. But why? Mom asked, sounding hurt. This is your home. No, it's your home where I've been living as unpaid household help, I corrected her. I need my own space, especially now with this project, and frankly, I need some distance from this family dynamic. You're just going to abandon us because you've had a little success? Mom's tone turned accusatory. After all we've done for you? I laughed without humor. This is exactly why I need to leave. One minute you're proud of my success, the next it's little success and I'm ungrateful. I need to be somewhere my achievements aren't constantly minimized. Your mother's upset, that's all, Dad tried to mediate. We're very proud of you, Emily. Your work ethic comes from me, you know. I always taught you kids to aim high. The attempt to take credit for my success was so transparent it would have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. I'm going to bed, I said, suddenly exhausted by their emotional gymnastics. We can talk more tomorrow, but my decision to move out is final. As I turned to leave, Mom called after me. I'll tell everyone my daughter, the architect, is designing the new Greenwood Tower. Wait until Aunt Carol hears about this. I closed my bedroom door, muffling her continued exclamations about my daughter, the architect, the very career she had dismissed as a hobby just 24 hours earlier. 3 months after winning the Greenwood Tower contract, my life was almost unrecognizable from before. Mitchell Sustainable Design had moved into a proper office suite downtown with a team that had grown to 7 people. My water reclamation system patent was pending, with Alexander Reynolds' company backing its commercial development. And most importantly, I was living in my own apartment with a spectacular view of the river and not a single chore assigned by my parents. The transition hadn't been entirely smooth. Mom had cycled through guilt trips, passive-aggressive comments, and finally reluctant acceptance of my independence. Dad had attempted to insert himself into my professional life, suggesting I bring him to client meetings to add construction expertise, an offer I gently but firmly declined. My new apartment became my sanctuary. For the first time, I could dedicate my full attention to my work without interruptions for household tasks. The results spoke for themselves. Our designs for Greenwood Tower had been refined into something truly revolutionary, garnering attention from architectural publications across the country. Alexander Reynolds had become a valuable mentor, introducing me to his extensive network and providing guidance on navigating the business side of architecture. His belief in my vision gave me the confidence to push boundaries further than I would have dared before. The key to innovation isn't just good ideas, he told me during one of our regular meetings. It's the courage to defend those ideas when conventional wisdom says they're impossible. The feature in National Sustainable Business magazine had led to inquiries from potential clients across the country, my inbox filled with emails from architecture students asking for advice or internship opportunities. The same industry that had once seemed impenetrable was suddenly opening doors. One afternoon, I received an email from Chloe Barnes, a third-year architecture student specializing in sustainable design. Her message was heartfelt, explaining how seeing my work featured in architectural innovations had inspired her to continue despite discouragement from professors who called her ideas unrealistic. I remembered that feeling all too well and immediately offered to meet her for coffee. Seeing my younger self in her enthusiasm and determination, I found myself in the unexpected position of mentor rather than mentee. Everyone told me sustainable systems would always be secondary considerations in commercial architecture. I explained to her that clients would never prioritize environmental impact over cost. But that's changing now, and you're entering the field at the perfect time to be part of that transformation. How did you stay confident when people dismissed your ideas? She asked, the question hitting close to home. I wish I could say I never doubted myself, I admitted, but there were many times I wondered if everyone else was right. The key was focusing on the problems I wanted to solve rather than the approval I wanted to gain. Water conservation mattered to me regardless of whether it impressed my family or professors. The conversation with Chloe reminded me how far I'd come, not just professionally but personally. No longer was I seeking validation from people unwilling to give it. I was finding purpose in mentoring others facing similar challenges. 6 months after winning the Greenwood contract, I agreed to a family dinner at my parents' house, the first since moving out. James and his new girlfriend would be there, and Mom had promised to make my favorite meal as a peace offering. Driving up to the familiar house felt strange now. What once had been my prison of obligation now seemed smaller, less intimidating. I parked behind James's car and took a deep breath before heading inside. The dynamic shift was immediately apparent. Mom greeted me with a hug but didn't immediately ask for help in the kitchen. Dad showed me the latest issue of Portland Architecture with Greenwood Tower's progress on the cover, proudly displayed on the coffee table. James gave me a knowing smile and a supportive shoulder squeeze. Emily, tell Rachel about your building, Mom prompted during dinner, addressing James's girlfriend. My daughter is designing the new Greenwood Tower downtown, she added with unmistakable pride. The same daughter whose career she had dismissed as a hobby now featured prominently in her conversations with friends, neighbors, and apparently potential future in-laws. The irony wasn't lost on me. After dinner, as James and Rachel cleared the table, a task that would have automatically fallen to me months ago, Dad pulled me aside. I owe you an apology, Emily, he said quietly. I didn't understand what you were building. I thought architecture was just about drawing pretty buildings, not creating systems that could change how cities function. The admission surprised me. Thank you for saying that, Dad. I was wrong about successful women in your field just being lucky too, he added. You've earned every bit of this through talent and hard work. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. His words, while appreciated, couldn't erase years of dismissal, but they were a start, an acknowledgement that perceptions could change, even deeply ingrained ones. Later, Mom joined me on the back porch. We sat in silence for a while before she spoke. The house feels empty without you, she admitted. I didn't realize how much I relied on you until you were gone. That's part of why I needed to leave, I replied gently, for both of us to see my value beyond what I could do around the house. She nodded slowly. I was jealous, I think, watching you build this career doing something you love. I never had that chance. It was easier to dismiss it than to admit I envied your freedom. Her candor caught me off guard. We'd never had this level of honesty before. It's not too late to find something you're passionate about, I suggested. A small smile crossed her face. Maybe. I've actually been thinking about taking some classes. As the evening wound down, I realized that success hadn't just changed how my parents saw me, it had changed how I saw myself. I no longer needed their validation to know my worth. Their newfound respect was welcome, but no longer necessary for my sense of identity or purpose. The real victory wasn't winning a prestigious contract or gaining recognition from industry leaders. It was finding the courage to value my own vision even when those closest to me couldn't see it, to believe in my ideas when conventional wisdom and family expectations pushed against them, to recognize that sometimes the people who should support you the most are the least equipped to do so, not out of malice, but out of their own limitations. As I drove back to my apartment that night, I thought about Chloe and the other young architects who might face similar obstacles. Perhaps the most meaningful legacy of my success wouldn't be the buildings I designed, but the barriers I helped break down for those who would come after me. The journey from being treated as the family maid to being recognized as an innovative architect hadn't been easy or straightforward, but it had taught me a lesson I would carry forward. Your value isn't determined by those who can't see your vision, it's confirmed by your courage to pursue it anyway. I've learned that sometimes people can appreciate your worth until others do first. It's not fair, but understanding this can save you years of seeking validation from those unable to give it. Instead, focus on building something so undeniably valuable that the world has no choice but to take notice. Has someone in your life dismissed your dreams only to change their tune when you found success? Have you ever had to prove yourself to family members who couldn't see your potential? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life experiences about finding your path despite the doubters. Remember, sometimes the sweetest success is proving wrong those who never believed in you in the first place. Thank you for watching, and I hope my journey inspires you to keep pursuing your vision, even when those closest to you can't yet see it.